afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank the Economist team for organizing these events, which are always a very useful way of fixing our ideas around the problems we are living. Now, the thing is that in these days, we need to do our thinking at full speed. When I started working on my papers for today, a couple of weeks ago, the big issue was whether Europe might have to do without Russian gas at some point, and what it might to do in order to prepare for it. Russia cutting off gas supplies just as we were heading into winter seemed very much like a worst-case scenario. Of course, that's exactly what happened. We are now in a scenario of full economic warfare in which we will have to do without Russian gas for the foreseeable future. The question is how, and specifically, in a world without Russia, will we be able to access enough energy? At what price? And will the energy crisis force us to let go of our decarbonization objectives? Let's look at each of these questions. The first issue is whether we will actually be able to get all the energy we need. And the answer is that over the next 12, 24 months, things look pretty tight. Russia accounted for around 150 billion cubic meters out of the 500 billion cubic meters of European consumption. I'm always giving numbers of the European Union. How might we replace that immediately? LNG is the first candidate. In the European Union, we have some regasification capacity, and I expect to be able to receive something around 40, 50 billion cubic meters. Secondly, we need to fill up existing importing pipelines, which means Algeria, Norway, and Azerbaijan, and this might calculate something around 20 billion cubic meters. Third, we have the opportunity to switch fuels to use less gas. Running coal plants at full capacity, we might reduce gas demand by roughly 40 billion cubic meters. None of these things are easy to do, and even if we do all of them together, we will probably be able to replace 110, 120 billion cubic meters out of the 150 we import from Russia today. And here there are three things to keep in mind. First, gas demand is highly seasonal, so any shortfall would be concentrated in the winter months. Secondly, we should hope that the coming winter will not be very cold, because a very cold winter means in the European Union between 20 and 30 billion cubic meters of more gas. And thirdly, we should bear in mind that whatever the shortfall will be, it will bite hardest in those areas which are most reliant on Russian gas, Germany and Eastern Europe. This will test the concept of solidarity in the European Union. Will those which are less reliant on Russian gas take a cut in supply to help those who are more reliant on Russian gas? So the next year or two look very challenging, but I think we will manage the situation as long as we will not have problems with some other suppliers. Let's hope so. This talk about the tight market brings me to the second of our question. What price will we need to pay for our energy? As of yesterday, gas prices at TTF, the main trading hub, was around 200 euros per megawatt hour, which is over 10 times what used to be. This is a problem for the continent as a whole. It is a problem for industry, which is being forced to shut down. Initial signs point to a decline in gas use for industrial use between 10 and 20%. And hardly a day goes without a manufacturer announcing that they are suspending production. It is also a drama, of course, for consumers, whose energy bills are rising at a time when inflation is already cutting into what they can afford to buy. No wonder then the European Union is considering price caps on gas measured to decouple the electricity price from that of gas, and big subsidies for industry and consumers. This may not be market orthodoxy, but we are now in a war economy. What perhaps less understood is that even if the situation does normalize, say in the mid-20s, the EU increases its capacity to import LNG. We have solved most of the problems. We will end up having a gas price which is between 2 and 3 times the gas price paid in the US, and possibly twice the price they will be paying in China. Having high energy costs will be a big issue for the European Union if you consider the many energy-intensive businesses will need to relocate in the US and in the Middle East. One way of reducing energy prices in Europe will be to increase supply via other pipelines, including maybe the Nabucco, the Eastern Mediterranean pipeline one day. But we need also to put commercial pressures on producers which are tied to us as we are to them. That includes North African countries and also NATO members such as Norway, which is benefiting from the current crisis but should be extending solidarity to other NATO members. Increasing gas supply requires investing in gas exploration, production, and infrastructures, with a payback period of decades, at a time when Europe is trying to reduce its reliance on fossil fuels. That brings me to the third question I asked. Will the energy crisis force Europe to let go of its decarbonization objectives? In theory, there is a near perfect convergence between decarbonization and supply security. The more solar panels, wind farms, grids, batteries, and electrolyzer we can get done, the more we will cut reliance on Russian gas. That suggests the European Union should decarbonize as fast as it can, which of course is true. However, it isn't quite as straightforward as it sounds. The first point to note is that in the immediate aftermath of the energy crisis, we had actually recarbonized our economies. Coal use in the European Union has gone up by 30%. Secondly, accelerating investments in renewables, batteries, grids, hydrogen, and the like requires government money, which may be needed to subsidize energy bills. And thirdly, to ensure supply security, we will need to provide long-term return visibility for upstream and midstream fossil fuel projects starting now. And that creates the risk of lock-ins for fossil fuels that may impair the take-up of renewable energy sources. That said, I think the energy crisis will end up being a net positive for the EU decarbonization strategy. As we search for alternative ways to access energy, it will force governments, and privates as well, to think outside the box, which is a positive for new nuclear, hydrogen, synthetic methane, and carbon capture and storage. These are key pieces of the decarbonization puzzle, accounting for around half of the energy we will use in a net zero world. Going green may also be the way in which we overcome our structural disadvantage compared to gas-producing regions of the world. It may be hard for the European Union to match the US on gas prices, but in a fully decarbonized world, there is no reason to believe our sunlight will be more expensive than theirs. Thank you.